Hello community, welcome to BlenderToday Live episode 238. Did you know that Blender actually 2.38 never existed actually? Now that I think of it, if you go to the list of releases, Blender 2.37 was the last in the series of 2.3, which was the big UI change from no panels to panels, as you can see in this nice splash that had the hands telling you that it was a graphic user interface project that showed panels, because this is what you have in a splash screen, part of the UI. And then at the end of that series was when the Open Movie project started in Elephant's Dream. So that's why there was a big gap until 2.40. And then and then the Orange project 2.42. So that's when things starting to happen. So we are going to talk about today about 4.1 mainly. Actually, not this week, but next week there will be changes in 4.0. The way things work, because just wait for it. But next week is gonna be definitely way more exciting in terms of what is new in 4.1. I'll just leave it at there. So next week there will be a show for sure, so stay tuned for that. But today, what do we have to see today? Well, we have a few things. There's around 250 commits, of which 70 are bug fixes and 59 or so cleanups. So there is a healthy mix of features. Not too exciting, but some of them are exciting. I know the topic of today's episode is called Vulkan, and that might be very exciting for many, for the industry. Yes, Vulkan is as part of Blender at the moment, but it is so unusual for the regular user that you're not expected to use it right away, but you are expected as a good citizen of this world and as a good Blender user to test it in your hardware and report any issues that you might have. We're gonna get there in a bit. Let's start in order. So we have a few actually there is another big announcement this week, but in developer.blender.org there was a blog post about node tools which are part of Blender 4.0, and they were enabled a few weeks back by default. They used to be experimental, and this blog post is going to teach you how to use them, how to make your own tools. If reading is not your thing, then stay tuned to this channel or the developers YouTube channel. Stay tuned to social media, probably this channel, or we're going to talk about the node tools with a actual developer, because Hans Goody, one of the developers working on this project, is here in the Netherlands. So we're going to have him here. He's gonna show me firsthand, and I feel very spoiled to have a tutorial by the people actually making the thing here, and we're gonna make a video for everybody to see. Other than that, let's see what is new in Blender today. Animation. For animation, there's not much actually. Two very tiny UI changes that are related to the changes last week. So yeah, last week there was an update on sync to selected, and new feature to sync colors. But actually what it did was copy. So this has been renamed to copy colors to selected. And the other change is also related to the user interface. The label edit bone color is now called bone color because it affects all modes. Pose mode, edit mode. So the word edit, it's implied there. Next from A we go to B for B mesh. Small optimization, tiny optimizations, and removing a redundant calculation for B mesh bisect. So yeah, reducing a bit of memory in there. In B for build, we have also very small change. I don't know exactly what is new in OpenColor.io 2.3, but I wanted to mention this anyway because this is an update on the libraries. There is a task already to update all these libraries for Blender 4.1 to go with the VFX platform, which will include, and many Pythoneers might be excited to hear, Blender 4.1 will use Python 3.11 by default. That is kind of big because Python 3.11 is like holy grail of performance compared to previous versions. Now many people are excited about that, so yes, pretty neat. If you have your add-ons that compatible with Python 3.11, Blender can already be compiled with Python 3.11. You'll be able to test it already for a while, actually. But yeah, this will be the default in the next year because Blender, as we know, aligns with the VFX industry standard list of libraries. So every major studio or minor studio, anybody that wants to align with what the industry is using, will follow next year this version. Or Live, GCC compilers, Python Qt. Big change actually. We don't use Qt, but apparently the jump is from 5.15 to 6.5. PyQt as well, NumPy, OpenEXR. OpenEXR is upping also for Blender. Well, we can actually see the list that affects Blender. Boost, OpenSubdiv 3.6, OpenEXR, OpenVDV, if it's released by next month, and so on. So pretty neat. People are talking here. Rashad Fox says, wait, so are the bug fixes for Blender 4.1 or for the LTS of Blender 3.6? Bug fixes, if applicable, of course, if there is a feature that doesn't exist in 3.6, the fix won't be needed there either. But yes, every bug fix, if applicable to 3.6 or even 3.3, will be backported and released. You can find the list of all the fixes in blender.org/LTS and look at the version that you're using. In the case of 3.6, you will find a list of all the updates. For example, 3.6.4 had only 4 bug fixes because 5 days before that there was the big release, 3.6.3, which includes all these bug fixes, all of them, with a link of where you can read more about them. And before that, 3.6.2 fixes all these things. And before that, 3.6.1. So if you are using 3.6.0 or you see someone making a video tutorial with 3.6.0 and you can see in the corner that there is in 3.6.0, let them know. It's like, hey, did you know that there is 3.6.4 now? How did I get here? Oh, because I was talking about the libraries. Okay, so yeah, the commit actually had nothing to do with it, but I like to mention this. It's up. From B we go to C for Compositor. The Compositor has one change, but it is in the Compositor section because it affects both CPU and GPU compositors. So the general rule. There is a huge improvement on the keying screen node. The change was basically went from a Voronoi interpolation to a Gaussian radial basis function interpolation, which much nicer, if you're much easier to understand if you just go to the picture, to the image, and then here, before, after. Huge improvement. But not only it looks better, but it's also faster to compute, and so it's less expensive to compute, and it's smooth and temporally stable. So the previous version was not temporally stable, which means that over time one frame with the other, it wouldn't match one frame to the other. So in animated, you would see flickering anymore. Super nice. Thank you, Omar, for working on this. And this actually was ported, well, I'm getting ahead of myself, to the Realtime Compositor later. C for custom properties. Look at this small commit, but huge usability improvement. Small commit because if you look at the commit, it's just adding a few more entries to a bit of Python. However, this enables extra subtypes for float arrays. So Blender will show the values correctly, the UI will look correctly, and the added sub-values are translation, not to be confused with actual translation, direction, velocity, acceleration, axis angle, and XYZ. Next, with C, we continue with cycles and a very tiny micro optimization for the principal BSDF shader when the index of refraction is 1. There's no need to calculate the specular layer, so skip it altogether when that happens. Next, well, the list for all the changes, you can find them on BlenderToday in the Blender community website. I posted the entire list of all 252 changes. Among them, there are cleanups and fixes and EV Next. I'm not going to talk about EV Next now, but next week. Because, just because, stay tuned. I'm not going to mention this. EV Next is already epic by itself. There's been 70 fixes. So if you had issues with Blender, maybe yours here. But of course you would have gotten a notification because you probably reported that error as a good Blender citizen as well. Next, the F for functions. Enable multi-threading when many nodes are scheduled at once. So this optimization is done to the function. So everywhere in Blender and like all node systems, this enables multi-threading when many nodes can be scheduled at once. This could happen when you are programmatically building trees that many nodes are like all these nodes can be compiled, can be run at once. Not so much when editing, when using the UI, but still useful to have performance improvement. Grease Pencil 3.0 has also gotten some bug fixes. For Grease Pencil, the drawing tool was added, not only bug fixes, but actual features. Drawing transforms. Insert keyframe when drawing is not exist. So yeah, Grease Pencil also can be hyped. No, it's already hyped enough. But yeah, there might be some things coming up maybe this week. If I understood correctly, the hints about getting suspense, getting maybe something geometry nodey going on somewhere. Not there. However, that is a good segue to the next change in geometry nodes. Again, actually geometry nodes didn't see many changes this week on the actual on the main platform, on the main branch. However, there is a mention of another patch which also has been being worked on. Look at this. Okay, so geometry nodes refactor how side effect nodes are set up. What is that? Read more. Okay, so this is definitely something under the hood, more obvious separation of concerns, reuse the code. Interesting. Okay, and then the last step, the last note says with gizmo nodes it may become necessary to add side effects nodes based on a compute context, but without having a corresponding viewer path. You said gizmo nodes? There is a work in progress early prototype of what could be soon gizmos or tools that you make with geometry nodes. This is kinda huge. You can have arrow gizmos, circle, square. So basically gizmos are everything in Blender that like all these tools. For example, when you're in this, like this is a gizmo. These are two gizmos actually, one to extrude, one to rotate, to move. These guys over here, they will be available and you will be able to build these gizmos using nodes. So the very first implementation of building UIs with nodes. That is tackling another section of the Everything Nodes project. Pretty interesting. Again, this is a work in progress. No, please don't even go there and start reporting issues, because as mentioned here, is work in progress, very early prototypes, not even an experimental setting inside of Blender yet. It's only lives in the code. So yeah, pretty exciting, pretty big, a new topic for Blender. So okay, next. It's just teasing, just teasing. All right. From G, we go to I for internationalization. That is the topic of changing, like adapting Blender to work in different languages. This week, translations have been added for Tamil, so for Southeast Asian, I think. It's in India. I think it's a Tamil language. It's in, yes, South Asia. And Bulgarian has been enabled, Greek and Nepali. That's pretty neat. But you know what is neat, what is better than that, is that there is now a way, and you may have seen this word going around, like updating UI translations from WebLate Git repo. What is WebLate? WebLate is an open source system to translate stuff, right? Many software use it. I think Godot uses it for their documentation for the UI. I'm not sure. Probably they do, because once you connect it, it makes. How does it affect Blender? Well, there's now an easy way to translate Blender via the web called translate.blender.org, and you can read more in the translation platform. This blog post has been posted like nothing ago by Francesco. Thank you, Francesco, for working on this. Pretty nice thumbnail, by the way. Yeah, translation platform. Localization is an important aspect of the Blender project. It is pretty big, so let me go full screen. You can now translate Blender from the web, and you and everybody can help translate Blender. And let's see how Blender is doing in terms of translation. So the system now is in place to translate all the supported languages, thanks to the work of Bastian, Brecht, Sergey, Arndt, Francesco himself for pushing for this project. And yeah, there is some links here how you can get involved. Especially at the beginning, you need to ask for an account, like you need to log in with your Blender ID in translate.blender.org, and then you need request for permission, because you need access to write to code. Please, if you have experience, first, if you know that language that you're translating to, that's a huge plus. And also if you have experience translating, because it can be, especially with languages that have too many interpretations. For example, Spanish, it's spoken in like more than 21 countries. So the Spanish from Spain is way different from Argentina, from Mexico, and from the US even, like very different. So please get in touch with the people who already maintain those languages. Don't go and try to change everything. Let's see how Blender is doing in terms of translation. So this is the current state. Or, well, if you go to translate.blender.org, you see the UI and the manual. Let's go to the manual. In manual, we see there is the glossary and the manual itself. In the manual, we can see that English is fully translated. Yes, cool. If we sort by translated, we see that the second most translated language is one you wouldn't expect. Slovak. Yep, Slovakia, killing it. It's nearly done, nearly complete. Some parts need attention, but then Chinese, it's simplified, is really 90%. Then Ukrainian, another one you wouldn't expect, right? Before French, Spanish, German, Portuguese, and other languages. So yep, Ukrainian, well done, 85%, French 75%, Vietnamese 60%, Spanish 41%. What are you doing, fellow Spaniards? Latinos, Hispanohablantes. Japanese, 40%, Portuguese, Russian, Italian. So it's like a game. Like a game. And I guess, I mean, German, 2%, I guess Germans don't really use their Blender in German. But this is the manual. This is for learning. So there are many, yeah, actually, if many German users or teachers have their channels and they're in English. So hey, let's do it. Let's get these numbers up. And the same with the Blender UI. Blender UI, it's way more so translated. The Catalan is even more complete than Spanish. So yeah, viva Catalonia. French, Slovak, Japanese, 99%. I bet Japanese authors are hating that 1%. But yes, 97%. All right, let's continue with, yeah, it's pretty exciting. Huge milestone for this. So thanks everyone involved with the Blender translation platform. These things nice for everyone. It's software that can't be understood by people in their native language. Is not as good as it could. Well, but it's not only that part, because there is also parts that developers do. For example, Damien Picard, he noticed that the new panel titles in nodes, they were not being translated. So he went ahead, made this little patch and fixed it. So now the panels inside of nodes, they can be translated. This is an oversight by developers. Sometimes it's easy to forget to add internationalization, but it's so important. So thank you, Damien. Always looking after every commit, every change. Next, let's see. That was I for internationalization, L for licensed headers. Okay, this just a what is this commit? It's like add SPDX header, license header. What is this? Well, this bit here, these 3 lines are on every Blender file. If you see some software out there claiming that they use Blender, or like they don't use Blender, but it clearly looks like Blender as a fork of Blender, and they point to sources somewhere, you know, on GitHub maybe, or on whatever they hosted these changes. If those files don't include the copyright that says 2023 Blender authors, then suspicious. Yes, just that. License headers gives authors to the Blender authors is a file in Blender that it's called authors file, and if you contribute to Blender, your name will automatically be there unless you request not to, and then your rights can be passed on to Blender Foundation to yeah, if you want to make some code but you don't want to be responsible for it, you can give your rights to the Blender Foundation, but otherwise everybody who has ever contributed to Blender is given credit in this file. Move on. M4 Metal. Well, this is another change that I just wanted to mention as that's something that's nice to mention, right? Because Apple people, Jason and other developers, are already working on optimizing EV Next, and this is so cool. This shows how important it is for companies to not support Blender just once, because, you know, like, I don't know, it could be easy to allocate sometimes, say, okay, support or fix these things or make Blender run, and then stop supporting it. And then Blender chain makes a new game, a new engine at some point, a new part of Blender, and needs maintenance. So it's cool that they even working ahead of time before even EVNX is by default or is available in Blender non-experimental, and they're already working on it. So thank you, Apple and Jason and everybody in there. Hope to see you all at the Blender conference in no time, which, by the way, if you haven't already, in conference.blender.org you can already vote for the Susan Awards. So if you go to vote, you can watch all the Susan Award submissions. You need to log in with your Blender ID and then you can vote. Yeah, you can watch, of course. Well, some of them have a password. I don't know if they... yeah, the password for the video, so... Somebody... if you see password there... Yeah, password is down there. Anyways, go vote for your favorite Suzanne Award. So this will make some of these short films nominated, and the nominations will be... people at the Blender conference will be able to vote in person. Next, we move to for Python deprecation warning. So if you develop add-ons that use the BGL module, or you use any add-on that uses the BGL module, you're gonna get a warning that it will be removed from Blender 4.0. Well, decision was made to not remove it for 4.0 yet, because it really doesn't hurt to have that part of the code. Apparently it's easy to just ignore it. So keep it around until OpenGL is removed completely, or is turned off by default. So now the warning is not going to say that it will be removed in 4.0, is that it just won't work in all platforms, because it won't. Next. Alright, now it is time for Realtime Compositor, because now the Realtime Compositor supports the King Screen node. So yes, this was related to the change I mentioned before, that now the King Screen node looks much better thanks to this new algorithm that it's used, the interpolation. So that makes it so it's also available in the Viewport Compositor. Yay! And alright, here, one that you were not expecting at all. Sculpt news. Yep. After many weeks, we are seeing some action in the Sculpt module. First, add vertex interpolation for the dynamic topology mode. Some work in dynamic topology is going on, which is super exciting. This change makes it so the newly added vertices have properly interpolated attributes. It doesn't clear all your attributes, doesn't mess up your mesh anymore. This includes things like vertex colors. New vertices are created by splitting the edges, so interpolation mixes between the edges two vertices equally. So maybe face corners have issue, but edges should be supported. Splitting edges, the attributes will be preserved. Next, draw color attribute during dynamic sculpting. So now you can actually see the color attributes while you're sculpting. Previously, the colors were just uploaded as white, the default value. Even if they're interpolated properly, it is still helpful to see the colors. You'll agree. At worst, the unaffected parts of the mesh will look right. A previous comment made vertex colors interpolate properly, but face colors will still reset to the default. As a reminder, only color and byte color attributes are currently supported for the specialized PVVH drawing. And last but not least, improve support of face sets with topology. Do not clear the face sets when enabling dynamic topology. This has been a long awaited one. I know I read online many comments, people complaining about this, right? After preparing their face sets so nicely. And draw face sets in the viewport when dynamic topology is enabled. So 2 big things this week. 3 big things. Attributes, vertex interpolation, vertex colors, drawing the color attributes, and face sets are now supported. So cool. Well, what is more exciting though is to actually see some action in the Sculpt module, and also coming from people such as Hans and Sergey, because they've been working on Blender forever. Sergey just finished working on cycle stuff and light linking for 4.0, and has just finished working on node tools for Blender 4.0 as well. So it's good that they move into other areas. However, yeah, we definitely need more people, because it's the same people making so different parts of Blender that, yep, super nice to see. Next, user interface, UI. Okay, start to search in menu when pressing spacebar. So in Blender 4.0, well, actually things are going to change tomorrow. just saying tomorrow, because there is a change in the user interface related to what I just mentioned, that if you use an older Blender version, the older than this afternoon, you can, in these menus, the node menus or Shift A menus, okay, you can start typing right away and Blender will start filtering by that. So if you press A, you'll see light area, right? It's finding items with the letter A. That it's good in a way, if that's what you want, but also it is removing the accelerator keys, which is a workflow that some people prefer. So starting this afternoon with a patch that made it just right before I was doing this live stream, the accelerator keys are still present. So you can, if you press M, it's not gonna search and filter by M for monkey. It will actually trigger the M menu for mesh, so you can still run those accelerator keys. By accelerator keys, I mean the underscore, the one that are underlined. Anyways, in starting today, but this feature that I just mentioned made it a few days ago and it's already available, so you can use it already. Probably is that you can start to search by pressing spacebar, which is much better, because spacebar, like if you wanted to search for something that you already looked for in the past, metaballs, right? I search for metaballs, nice. If I wanted to search for metaball already, I would have to first know what I was searching for, or type any letter like Z and then remove it, and then I will see my recent searches. Now if you press spacebar, you already see there's no query, so you see all the items that you look for in it. Pretty neat. All right, the next change is also related to search, is that the recent search will only show if, like, the recent items that you search for will only show up if the query is very short, like if you're looking for 1 or 2 characters, which is when you want it the most, right? Like if you already searched for it, there's no need to search for it again. This was done because while working on it, it could happen that you wanted something else, but it's not, like in the nodes, for example, if you search for curves, you're gonna get a bunch of nodes, or like curve to mesh, mesh to curve resample, like there's a bunch of different use cases. If you search for one of them and then you search for curves again, you will get always those items. And when searching, if you already type a few letters, then it really means that you want that specific node, not the one you looked for before in the past. That's a change. As soon as you trigger search, the first item will show, but as soon as you start writing something else, then background shows. Nice. So 3 letters from the background instead of the other. Search my recent search. It would be nice if, and maybe it's a change for 4.1, that instead of just showing recent searches, that it shows recently used items. This is an idea that Julian Kaspar mentioned the other day, and I think it should be the way to go. That not only the items that you search for, but the ones you actually trigger, the ones you actually clicked on in the menu, would show up in the search. Really neat. Okay, next. Remove empty space in tool settings with toolbar visible. Yep, the that awkward gap that was present in Blender for a few versions now, this gap here. The idea was that the icon would show, the tool icon would show there. Make it slightly bigger. Yeah, the idea was that by having the empty space, the UI wouldn't jump every time you toggle it on and off. But really, it only takes, if you look at how people are using Blender, if you look at tutorials, you look at, I spent a lot of time watching screencasts of other people, like time lapses and tutorials, and or videos like, I don't know, Ian Ewert showing like an hour-long video of how it uses Blender and stuff, and you see these people don't even toggle that the toolbar that often. It's either on or off, so that jumping, it's not really a big deal. And also the UI is already jumping there. This text is jumping, so why even having that gap? So no longer, the gap is no longer there. Nice. So and even this shaped UI now is, gap is gone. Next. Add descriptions to a few geometry nodes. Thank you, Ari Ramati, for adding descriptions to some nodes. Some nodes didn't have anything. Some are descriptive, I guess, but always better to have some description. So thank you, Ari. Leon added display invalid cache as striped lines in the timeline. This is a way to indicate when cache in simulation nodes or other caches are invalid. It could be the only way to tell them apart before was just a light change in alpha in these lines, and it wasn't very clear. So now the lines will draw with us stripes, so you can actually tell when they're no longer, when they don't work anymore. Basically, stripes are easy to read. The variation in alpha is not clear enough, especially for if you have side issues, or if you have some impediment, it's more clear. A pattern. And last but not least, speaking of patterns, you know, when you double click on text, for example, if you have seen something and then you double click to select words, well, in some languages like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, some punctuation like dots and commas were not taken into account. So whenever you double click, even though there was a dot, then there was just select the whole thing. Not anymore. Now this has been, thanks to Yiming. Cool. And see you at the Blender conference. Again, we already met this year in Beijing. Gonna meet again at the Blender conference. Be excited about that. And the Blender conference is like, what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Crazy. All right, that is the last change in the user interface. And now USD, improved camera import and export and round tripping. The units were wrong, so this fixes many issues. 1. Wrong units and flipped shift values on import. Wrong clip start lower range on import. Wrong units for aperture and focal length properties on export. Issues with the auto sensor, fit and height width on export. All these fixes by Denis Kovacs will make it into 4.0. Yes, these are a fix for Blender 4.0 as well. So nice. And last, no, not last, actually, there's a bit more. V for Vulkan. A few changes. 1. An extension. It's enabled only if Vulkan, that version of your computer supports it. Extension is called Vulkan Chronos Maintenance 4. Made for Vulkan 1.3, but Blender will support 1.2. Cool. It is just so older or other more hardware can support it, like the Intel Iris Plus. Cool. Wayland also wasn't working, was crashing even with Vulkan. That's having fixed. And with all those changes, there is now a experimental option, which is not in the experimental in the, it's not this kind of experimental. You actually have to run Blender with a command with -- GPU backend Vulkan, I think. We're gonna look at it now. But yes, this means that Vulkan, it's now available in Blender by default. by request if you enable it when you run it. Why? Because it needs to be tested, and it is very early stages, as in support is lacking, performance is way not what it was, what the developers mean for the final version. And right now everything is done sequentially, like every update, every instruction is done like, okay, do this, okay, do that. It's not like the threaded, it's not like not optimized, but that's on purpose, because the focus is to have Vulkan running stable and feature parity with rest of with the rest of Blender, and to also have as much support with other hardware as possible. So the first step is to not crash. You can find a list of the things that work and that do not work. So OCO OpenColor IO textures are not supported on Intel and AMD GPU. sRGB standard is supported on those platforms. AMD Polaris based GPUs will generate a crash when drawing the 3D cursor. It doesn't support this yet. The colors in the node editor and sequencer aren't detected correctly. The image UV editor isn't working on as many texture formats and hasn't been tested yet, so that's something you can help with. 3D viewport is known to be flickering. Sometimes the workbench doesn't display anything affected. Rotate the view widget is partially drawn. 3D viewport wireframe will crash. So yes, there is some work to be done. Performance is not even there yet. It's 20% of what the developers want to achieve. The reason is that each command is sent to the GPU one at a time. The implementation even waits until we have feedback that the GPU is idle again. So it's all done to make things run first and then improve performance. Otherwise, it will be harder to detect what went wrong. So yeah, why is an experimental option? First, it ensures that the features are being tested with Vulkan. Ensures that building with Vulkan is possible on all platforms, right? Once this is enabled in main, the build bot here or people at home can test it, can see that it compiles. Get feedback from developers if they can run even on their systems or not. On different environments, for example, the main development was done in Linux using X11 and occasionally testing using Windows. Validate that add-ons that use a GPU module are working. So if you have an add-on and you want to make sure that your add-on that uses a GPU module can work with Vulkan, make sure to get this out. Possible to enable GLSL validation on the build bot. Nice. And if it compiles on all the machines that it requires. Big. How can you enable it? Well, you can run Blender with --GPU backend Vulkan in the name. So do I even have? Yeah, will Linux and I run Blender. I actually haven't tried it here. It closes. Very good. Well, actually I didn't compile with it. So, even though it is very early stages, it is a huge that's good on everybody in the GPU module. And last but not least, W for Workbench. Workbench has some performance regressions that has been fixed, and the idea is that it should be on par with the previous implementation of the Workbench. Though I mentioned a few weeks ago that the Workbench Next, the rewrite of the refactor of the Workbench, like equivalent to EVNext, but for the Workbench, was made default. And you may have noticed, if you have a lower end computer, like a some years old computer, you may have noticed that the Workbench was running a bit slower. That has been fixed apparently with this improvement, with this fix by Miguel. But yeah, if you have a powerful GPU, you may haven't noticed. You may didn't notice because all the memory. Okay, that is all for what is new in Blender as of this week. We can move it to see what the people are chatting about. What time is it? 2 minutes to 6 o'clock. So let's do 5. How many are there? 8 questions. All right, let's do all 8. Maybe I manage. And no order because I plan to do all 8 of them. And one is a comment to a reply. Okay, let's start with the first one by Temetry. Hi Pablo, I have a question about packing UVs in geometry nodes. I think in the last release, Blender 3.5, no, the last release is 3.6. We had an update to the UV packing algorithms that allowed Blender to take into account the negative space and actual shapes of the UV islands. Yeah, that was in 3.6. This feature worked great when using the standard UV editor, but when I use geometry nodes, it seems to default to the old style of UV packing where everything is calculated based on the bounding box instead of the actual volumes on the UV islands. Is this intended? And if so, is there a way of getting around this to use the new UV packing algorithm in geometry nodes? It is intended because when UV, well, it is intended. I'm just thinking out loud here. But when the UV tools were added to geometry nodes, the new packing algorithm wasn't implemented yet. So I think that geometry nodes UV algorithm will have to be updated to use the other one. Okay. Although for performance reasons, I don't know if that would be the default. I'll have to check. I need to ask the developers. There's some developer watching the moment, but no. But yeah, I will need to ask them. Get back to you. But yeah, that might be one of the reasons why, because the geometry nodes was done before the new alpaca packing system. Nabad says, "Oh Pablo, Week 1 is always fun to watch." It is fun to watch and to see it crash. This isn't my question. This week, a friend asked me about IK system, inverse kinematics. They work great for humans, mainly when humans are using them, but anything with more than 2 joints is a bit of a draw of a trouble. IK wants to limit the movement of one end of the. People are coming out with very complex setups to get around this. Is there anyone looking at IK algorithms or making them more extensible, like by allowing multiple poles, stiffness per joint, as well adding a pole that makes first joints floppier, this last joints stiffer, for more than 3 bones? For me, the vector curves and color curves in the shader editor does not have the spline math fixed yet. It says that's a different question, I guess. A thing where new points on a steep spline doesn't properly inherit curves. Just found it. Okay, first question. If there is anyone looking at that, is there anyone looking at IK algorithms? Not that I know, but the Animation 2025 project, it not only covers animation, but also rigging. It's part of the animation and rigging module, including rigging nodes. So maybe that will be tackled. I'm not sure. Have you checked the blog post from the team and the animation workshop? And there's another animation blog post before that, the future of animation. If they say, how do I find IK target? So yeah, not that I know, but you can always ask the team in those threads or on chat. Hello Pablo, Chris says, how can we snap the axis when modeling? How can we snap the axis? Which axis? You can snap, well, there is a gazillion options for snapping. Like when you add a face, you can snap to pretty much everything, right? Like edges, vertex, face near. Like this panel needs its own little wiki because it's huge. Has all kinds of settings. Some of these settings it doesn't look like, but you can shift click to enable them and snap to multiple things at the same time. So this panel needs some attention. But yeah, this is how shift click and in some of them, even though they look the same, In some you can shift click, in some you cannot shift click. In some of them you don't even need to shift click. Ah, this UI is so bad. It's so bad because, yeah, because the buttons look the same, but they do different things. Some of them are exclusive, some of them table, others, some of them you need shift, some of them and I need to sit down and think of how to. Anyway, snap the axis. Yeah, snap it with an axis to what? You can add custom transformations, and this would basically add a new type of transform to which you can use regular X, Y, Z shortcuts to axis or whatever transform selected. Next question, Static says, hello Pablo, I have two questions. One, does EVNext improve the handling of objects with transparency? They are really wonky in classic Eevee. I would say transparency, yes, or like if it's ray traced, better chance that it will be tackled differently. Any ETA, estimated time of arrival on improvement of texture layers. I bet the project goal guys need those. I need some hope. I'm high on copium when it comes to the layer textures. No, I'm not gonna give any estimated time because it can always go wrong, but it's gonna be, it was a target for 2022, target for 2023. Well, it wasn't really a target for 20, it was just 2022 and it naturally moved into next year, but let's hope 2024 is the year because we already have some of the other targets already achieved. Light linking was a huge one of them, so let's fingers crossed. Also, the layers topic, like, because the thing is that the idea is to use layers to layer and use nodes, right? A node setup, and the concept of layers, it will be already should be tackled for Grease Pencil and geometry nodes. So we're using geometry nodes with Grease Pencil because they are layers. It's a way of representing an architecture we don't have yet in Blender, right? Blender calculates everything from left to right, so we will have to work on that, on how to represent layers in Andre Kling says, and there's last two questions. Okay, Andre Kling says, hello, Pablo, is there any news regarding VR and Blender? I remember that there was a call for a dev by Daniel Lara in the last conference. Have you seen the Freebird project? If there is nothing new regarding VR, maybe this could be a project that the institute could help sponsor. I haven't seen Freebird, but I have talked to Daniel Lara a few weeks ago. 1 week ago, when I was in Valencia. The development of the VR project is actually being funded by a company that is actually supporting Blender on the development, on the Blender conference. The company is called Next Lab, and they are going to have a booth at the conference, but also they are going to be, Daniel is going to have a presentation in the schedule, and we look for, what is it, Daniel? How many Daniels we have? Two here, there you go. So Next Lab, Grease Pencil VR, the MPX mouse, pen, and R for workflow vision. There will be a presentation at the Blender conference with some updated news regarding. And last but not least, hi Pablo, thank you for all your hard work. Thank you. Glenn, the 3D line drawing guy in Japan. Is there a way to type in a distance and just move the mouse to select a direction? Is there a way to type in a distance and just move the mouse to select in a direction? How would you type a distance and then move the mouse? I have used the minus mark when typing distances now when drawing lines or cubes, but it should be quicker just typing in the distance and then moving the mouse like in SketchUp. In these cases, a picture, a GIF, or a video would help so much, because I have trouble understanding. Like, you type in a distance and then you move the mouse. But then, why would you move the mouse if the distance is already set? I need a visual. Yeah, you understand. Sorry. I also wanted to let you know that the mesh line tool in edit mode is working a lot better in 4.1 compared to previous versions. It used to be difficult to close shapes with faces, but now almost everything closes properly. Thanks to everyone for that. CAD is a lot easier now. I hope the Blender team adds a line tool today. Thank you for bringing this up, because I know you've been requesting this for a long time, and many people, I mean, with their best intentions, they request a feature, and when the feature is added, it's like silence. So it's nice to address, like, hey, you know, this thing that I've been asking for years, it's working a lot better in 4.1. So yeah, adding a line tool to the base tools one day. So a tool here, you mean, in edit mode? Yes, absolutely. I don't think anybody would disagree with having that built-in tool, but if someone from the community can or have already implemented it, reach out. Oh wait, that is enough for today. I answer all questions. I think I'm ready to call it a day, and maybe I think we should, no, maybe not, we should definitely meet next week, because next week not only there will be huge changes, as in render engines maybe becoming, you know, non-experimental anymore. Yeah, well, it's still experimental because they are in alpha stage, right? 4.1, but maybe in a stage where more people can use it. So that would be exciting to see. So I think we should meet also, because the week after is going to be so next week is the 16th. Let's meet next week, because the week after is the 23rd, just a few days before the Blender conference, which is always a busy time. So I think I'm gonna skip that one to focus on the conference. And then the week after is 30th, which is 1 week before the release of Blender, well, 2 weeks before the release of Blender 4.0. So we'll see then. And then there is 4.0. We're thinking ahead, too much ahead ourselves. Let's meet again next week, about the same time, definitely in the same place, for another episode of BlenderToday Live. I don't even warn you anymore, because the sound, people complain that the sound is not even loud enough. I'll see you again next week. Happy blending. Have a great week. Enjoy whatever Blender gives you in the shape of joy and pixels.